find out what vitamin D is.
Come right in front.
Really? Well, yeah, then you're blocking all the sun. How are you going to make vitamin D? They don't get vitamin D.
And it's usually
是有大厅里面有，那你们不划不来吗？
in college, his before he and then they want to
actually
get back up
and shot himself.
Try to figure out what payments in that, and I don't know.
His mother sent him to Cambridge to get educated. So his daughter, in their many travels back to the British Isles, he fell in love with. She fell in love with an Irish magistrate, a diplomat, and so they were headed to Zanzibar, and Mom and Dad, boring, didn't like that idea at all. So, as a wedding present, they were married in 1910. As a wedding present, he purchased an estate called Muckross in Ireland. Have any of you ever been there? Okay. Well, this estate is 650 acres. Muckross is 5,000 acres. Okay. This house is 500,000 square feet. I'm sorry, 50,000 square feet. The Muckross is 100,000 square feet. So it's a very, very large estate. And it was actually his dream to live there. But all of his businesses were here. Now they did travel abroad quite a bit. But so he bought that place, and he didn't give it to them, but he did give it to them to live in. And so they raised their children there. And so they ended up building the house in 1915, and the reason that they bought it, this area, was because it reminded him of Muckross. If there hadn't been a Muckross, there would probably never have been a Filoli, because he just fell in love with everything. He just loved the area, and so the idea was this was sort of his California version of Muckross. Now, they were. Garden at home. Anybody have a garden at home? That people lived in, not necessarily a museum. So even although it is a museum, original drapes, 100-year-old drapes in all but one of the rooms, and we have 17th and 18th century Irish English antiques, priceless. Audition for this job, and what they do is they come in on Tuesday, and they come in on Monday, we're closed, and they clean out all the receptacles, and they cut the flowers and condition them, and then on Tuesday morning, before anybody gets here, they arrange all the arrangements of all of the main rooms, and then on Thursday, they'll water again. Saturday, they might replace some flowers, and then the whole thing starts over on Monday. So we have over 100 volunteers who give their time and energy to volunteer to do these beautiful flower arrangements. So this is the cloakroom, and if you were shown into this house, you would have probably driven a long way, and they didn't have 280 then. So you would want to freshen up. So you would freshen up in either the men's cloakroom or the women's cloakroom, and then you would be shown into the reception room. This is called the transverse hallway, and this transverse hallway is the length of the house. It is also one of the parallel axes that the garden is built on. So the garden is connected to the house, but it's not here where a Victorian garden would be. It's straight up that hill, so it's sited to the left of the house. This property is on a fault line. It's 400 feet that direction and runs parallel to the house. So, but I guess he wasn't that afraid of it. So here we are.
So he built all the steel, that's why.
Well, sure.
I don't know if they do it.
Okay. So we're going to go through here and have been, and the television shows that have been a part of Filoli. Probably the most famous was the Dynasty Flyover. Do you remember the movie, the show with Dynasty, John Forsythe and Linda Evans, and it's back in the 80s. Well, in the beginning, it was about the Carrington family. They were very wealthy, and they would fly over this estate, and this was the estate they flew over the beginning of every show. And but we've also had other movies. The most probably famous movie is Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty, and again, these incredible old world clothes. And they're just in pristine condition because they pack them away very carefully. So we're going to go into the men's clothes room. You can imagine how much it would cost. And so many of the born pieces were sold at auction, and many of them have come back to the house. And when it was given to the National Trust wasn't even that interested in the house. It was only 60 years old, and most of the homes that are in the National Trust were much older. Okay, back east. Most of them were back east. So they kind of closed up the house and didn't show it, believe it or not. And but the garden was on the map. She had put the garden on the international map, and Mrs. Roth had. And then in the 1990s, a man came through the house, and the reason they had started to open the house with not a lot of furnishing in it was because of the movie that Warren Beatty had done, Heaven Can Wait. What happened was a movie company came in and they refinished the floors and they archivally painted the house. They didn't remodel it, but they did sort of give it a spruce up. But it's a historic house, so they couldn't just use any paint. In fact, the floor is only because we're on the servant side. We're going into the kitchen now. Hello, this is Rob's Chinese chef. And children tell stories. There's only one thing.
That's all
Filoli died last year. The other twin daughter died 2 years ago.
And then so
They always told
Jennifer
stories.
Morrison, she's still there.
This week,
Still there, yeah.
Kilo. So yeah, really, really beautiful. Beautiful view of the clock tower from here. And so the meals were prepared in here, and then they were served in here. So we're going to go into the butler's pantry. It's interesting.
Oh, yes, it's fine.
So this is the butler's pantry, and we have this warming drawer is from the Bourne era, and we have a dumbwaiter, which went to 3 floors. They would put food and laundry and that kind of thing. We also have a safe. Now, why would you have a safe? Well, in the early 1900s, I think it was right, 1903, Mr. Bourne commissioned from Tiffany a silver set. Silver set was for 18 plate settings, but each plate setting had 28 pieces in it. So when they would travel abroad, which was quite often, they would put all their silver in the vault. Okay, so here, the most famous dinner we ever had here at Filoli was called the Drunk's Dinner. If you look closer, they do have dolls and tubes. They do have a lot of great. They have cruisers. So they, and this is the Bourne China. Okay, so they definitely recreated it. And this is the evening wear. So you see this dress is that dress. Isn't that cool? And this dress in the case is this dress. Okay? So really, really incredible clothing. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about this rug. This rug was originally bought at auction for the library, and that's where Mr. Bourne put it. But it was getting very frayed on the ends because the room was much smaller than the dining room, so they moved it to this room so that they could protect it a little bit more. But this rug actually, tapestry, I don't know, seems kind of wrong to call it a rug. But it actually was in Queen Victoria's house, Osborne House, on the Isle of Wight. So he bought it from them. And then when they restored that house, they actually wanted this rug back, but Mr. Bourne wouldn't give it to them. So they made, it was actually designed by Queen Victoria's husband. So they ended up making it cross into this room to get to this room. So this would be a door that was only open from the side that the servants would use, and then they would shut it behind them. Here are some pictures. We've been talking about both families, so we want to just bring your attention to, this is the Bourne family. So this was Mr. and Mrs. Bourne with their daughter Lurleen, and their daughter Maud. And then this is them after he had his stroke and he's in a wheelchair. This is Maud, probably around 19. This is Mrs. Roth having tea by one of the windows. And then over here we have the Roth family. And this is Mrs. Roth with her champion horse, Chief of Longview. And this is her in Ireland. We also have a painting of this with superimposed Hawaiian backdrop. So the overcoat makes sense in the Irish picture, but not in the other picture. These are the twin girls at their coming out party. She dressed them alike until they got married. I guess they didn't mind. And then there's only been one wedding here. Complicated process. What they do is they actually carve the wood. Then they inlay it with clay. And they fire it and paint it. And so this is all those screens. We always have an Ikebana Oriental arrangement here because we have a lot of Oriental, usually vases and things in this room. And people always ask, gosh, were they Buddhist or, does that have anything to do with their religion? And the answer is no, they were Episcopalians, they were Republicans, and they went to the Episcopalian church here, and wealthy people collected Asian art. So this is the god of the sun, the goddess of the moon. These were on top of a building, and originally they were shiny. So you can see a little bit of the shine still. See the shine? But now they're very weathered, so you don't really see that. And that's why they always have the Ikebana arrangement here. But again, look at these exquisite clothes. I was just so taken with them. And they wear horses. And this whole waist training is now back in vogue. And when we get to the ballroom, they actually design just gorgeous. And even though this looks like a very masculine room, I want you to know that all these carvings are in floral pattern. So the whole garden idea is all throughout the room. Here's a picture of Mrs. Bourne, William Bourne's mother, and she was the one who called him home and thought that the gold mine was petering out. A couple of years back, we had a leak, and the roof fell in and broke this chair to smithereens, and that was on the floor, and there was a huge cut, a gash in the picture, and they have such wonderful restoration people that go to work on these things. You would never know that they had damage. This is a replica of a library at Dunham Place outside of London, England, from 1690, and he acquired the plans from Leningen and Moran and basically expanded it. But he loved that library. It was a historic house, obviously, and he wanted a copy for his house. Okay, so here we have the charcoals and up there, and it's where all the women are buried along with Bourne, mom and dad, and they exhumed the body of their son, and he's buried up there too. These guys are all in Ireland. That's where they got daddy and son. They were buried there. Again, here we have that nice art, kind of the 30s period here.
It just seems like it's another half of this.
So here we are with these example, what they call ridiculous. Mr. Polk wanted much larger. But just seems along that size, decorative doorway openings.
So we know it's the same stairwell.
This stairwell, normally for most people, they would put it like when you first walk into the house, there's the grand staircase, they put theirs off to the side. This is the wall that I told you cost $35,000. So we don't touch it. That's okay. At the top of the stairs is a flag. And Mr. Warren, before the United States got into World War I, he was very, very sympathetic because when our young nation was, having its birth, it was the French who helped us sort of, they helped us out a lot. So he was always very sympathetic to the French. The French stayed involved in World War I, and he really tried to get the United States to get into the war. See, before he wanted to do something for the French. So what he did was he gathered together.
You want that way?
Colonial boys to take field trips over to France and help drive the ambulances.
Okay, hold on. Honey.
So he had a vault over there for his gold shipments, gold dust shipments, and over here were for his office papers. This deer head was actually shot at Muckross and given to Mr. Bourne by his son-in-law. Here's the picture that I told you about that has the Hawaiian backdrop. The overcoat just doesn't make sense in Hawaii, but that was done by, a Hawaiian painter. They had a house in Hawaii and they spent a lot of time there. But let's look at these pictures. Because here is Captain Madsen with Lily Lowe and their daughter Lurleen. Here's Lily Lowe and the baby when she was a baby. She's probably 19 there, probably early 20s. Her husband, she's probably in her 50s there. Okay, here are the two girls. Even their brother couldn't tell them apart. He would just say, "Hey, sis," and one of them would answer. This is Herbert Hoover before he became president, but he was actually working in the transportation department, and that actual picture was taken when they were christening one of the ships, and he was there. This is Billy, Billy and the twins. These are the twins as they got older, and this is the three of them. Like I said, she's going to be 96 this year. She died 2 years ago. Billy died last year. And the families have stayed very involved with Filoli. Now, when the Roths took over, this was their kind of TV room. This is where they... Originally, this was the gentleman's lounge. If you look closely into the floor, you'll see these little bow ties inlaid in the floor. That was to kind of give it a little masculine feel. This is where they would play cards or pool or something like that. We now use it as the trophy room to display some of the trophies that belong to Mrs. Roth. This was her Hackney carriage. She actually competed. She drove the Hackney carriage herself. There's the bust of Chief of Longview. She also had Easter on Parade. They named the farm, Grandma. And she said, "Oh, why worry about it?" So they named it Why Worry Farm. And here we have the holding room. It's outside of the ballroom. And normally we have architectural pictures in here right now because of this year. Before we go into the ballroom, I want to explain to you a little bit about what the ballroom is about. When they started building the house, they built it from 1915 to 1917. Then they went on to work on the garden, the walls. Now it was Ernest Peixoto that was involved in that. And then they also had a woman who had worked at the Hearst Castle, and they brought her over and she helped come up with the planting combinations. And then they built the tennis court. And Mr. Bourne never got to play on the tennis court because he had a stroke up the line. Just about pictures on. This is when the fire from Monroe. If you look over the fireplace, when Mr. Bourne purchased Muckross, it was in foreclosure. The ruins of Muckross Abbey were included in the property. And if you above Ross estate from the water. Now, the reason that it was in foreclosure was because Queen Victoria had the habit of going around and visiting all of these great estates with her entourage of servants. And she was deathly afraid of dying in a fire in the middle of the night, sleeping on the second story. So she said, I'll come to Mount Ross if you build me a ground floor suite, which they did. You see that little area above on the bottom there to the left, that was where she slept. And you couldn't really kick the company to the curb, and she's the queen of England. So she would stay and stay and stay, and she ended up bankrupting all of these great estates where she would go visit. And